What's going on, everyone? You're listening to the My Aggie Nation podcast. I'm Alex Miller from the Eagle here in the Eagle newsroom. But up here, that's Travis Brown. Travis is in Omaha covering the College World Series in the heartland of America. Travis, it's media day up there in Omaha. How are things going as day one of the College World Series approaches?
It is absolutely fast and furious. The Aggies were the first ones up here. They were the first ones to take practice, first one in the press conference room, and they're just firing through all 8 teams as we go through. There's lots of storylines everywhere, some from the teams that A&M is on that side of the bracket with, some on the other side. It's mayhem, but all the best kind of mayhem here at the Schwab.
Yeah, storylines just abound with this team, the side of the bracket that they're in. When you look at who they're playing first, who they could potentially play down the road in bracket play, what are some of the main storylines coming into this first game? A&M, of course, starts the College World Series on Friday at 1 p.m. against Oklahoma.
310. Yeah, a lot of talk on that exact matchup because it's going to be an interesting one for A&M. Jim Schlossnagle said that the Sooners offense is unlike any that they've really seen in through SEC play. SEC, of course, has the big power bats in the smaller stadium, so lots of home runs, lots of extra base hits. Oklahoma, their players, when they was asked about their offense, they said they like to create chaos, which it's a little bit more like what A&M saw in Louisiana in the regional, but probably with a little bit more hitting prowess than maybe the Raging Cajuns had, of course, because they were able to get here to the College World Series. But the Sooners are maybe the hottest team coming into this series. They won the Big 12 tournament and have blown through a regional and a super regional. A lot of people thought they would host a regional. They didn't. But here they are, and they're facing the Aggies. Nathan Detmer is going to be up for the Aggies first on the mound, a right-hander, one that the Sooners haven't saw. You'll remember Micah Dallas, their other starter, pitched for Texas Tech before coming to A&M, and the Sooners have seen him go. So Jim Schlossnagle said he thought about doing something a little crazy in this first game to maybe line them up a little bit better moving forward, maybe like doing a bullpen game or an opener using the bullpen in an interesting way to start the game. But he said, I'm sticking to the routine. They're going with Detmer, and that's how the game is shaping up leading into it.
Of course, the College World Series, there's 8 teams. It's double elimination. They're split into 2 brackets of 4 teams that play double elimination on each side. The 2 winners of the brackets then play each other in a best-of-3 championship series. Travis, Notre Dame and Texas, they are the other 2 teams in A&M's side of the bracket. What's kind of the memo going on between the Fighting Irish and the Longhorns, who A&M beat earlier this season, actually?
It's funny because people were joking, what other situations go into where like Notre Dame seems to be kind of the underdog, but you look in that bracket, that side of the bracket, you have A&M, Texas, and OU, like you said, all regional rivals, all kinds of storylines in there. The fan bases want to play each other, and then there's kind of Notre Dame over here. That's not a bystander to it all, but a fourth party to it all, and so, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that game plays out. A lot of questions towards the UT players about how does it feel to have not a lot of people like you. And I know there was a lot of animosity when they were out at the East Carolina series and fan bases getting into it, lots of horns down. You wrote a little bit of the story about that as well. So I asked those players a little bit about how exciting it'll be, that the fact that it doesn't matter who wins or loses any of those games. Texas is going to go in and play one of their natural rivals in that second game, whether it's in the elimination game or if it's in the winner's bracket. So, man, that's going to be a lot of fun for everyone who's coming to watch some of those games.
On the other side of the bracket, there's Stanford and then the 3 other SEC West schools, Arkansas, Auburn, and Ole Miss. I think you just talked with some Stanford guys. Jacob Palish, of course, played at Stanford before he came to A&M this last season. How unique is that former teammate getting to come to the same spot with his former team?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, they one of the Alex, I just forgot his last name, so I didn't bring the roster. But one of the pitchers for Stanford said they're buddies, and before the season started, Palish texted him and said, like, hey, well, I'll see you. Good luck on the season, and we'll see you in Omaha. Came to fruition. They were actually all as a team watching the final outs of that A&M series, and they took a picture watching it. And one of the players said, yeah, we kind of decided whether it'd be a good look or not to tweet that out, but they said, hey, he's our buddy, and we want to see him do well as long as he's kind of not playing us. So they elected to put that tweet out there of all kind of congratulating him on advancing. I talked a little bit with Stanford coach at the end and about Jim Schlossnagle bringing him in that 3-2 count in the super regional, and everyone in the stadium and in college baseball knew he was going to throw that slider, and he still managed to get that pitch in, and he was really impressed with that effort. So a lot of love there. The coach said he's going to go and get a selfie with him. He's a big selfie guy, and told him if they can get to Omaha, it was going to happen, and they're going to make that happen sometime here in the next couple of days. A really cool story between those guys, and a lot of love still with those teammates.
Pretty competitive side. 3 teams A&M's pretty familiar with on that side of the bracket. Just real quick, who do you think it might be the biggest contender on the opposite side of the bracket of A&M?
I think the Vegas odds actually have it as Ole Miss, which is interesting enough. But Arkansas is always a tough team when it comes to the College World Series and the team that they've been able to put together. And then you have Stanford, who's a national seed. The interesting thing about this, now that Tennessee is out of this mix, of course, they got knocked out by Notre Dame in that A&M side of the bracket. Without Tennessee in here, there's not really that one team that seems completely well-rounded. There's a lot of teams in here that, at least at some point in the season, had to overcome some deficit in their game, and some are bringing that into here. I mean, it's always been interesting to hear Jim Schlossnagle talk about the Aggies leading up to this College World Series, saying, when we get to this spot in our program, when they get to the spot in the program where they've built up their pitching staff, things will be good. Well, they're the second highest seeded Omaha right now without that aspect of program building yet. So, what's to come? So I think that it's a pretty wide open game for anyone. I think the Aggies are going to have, going back to the Aggie side of things, they're going to have their hands full with Oklahoma. It's a team that if A&M doesn't bring their absolute A game, especially defensively and especially pitchers fielding their position, it could get sideways quick.
Yeah, I was going to segue into this. What do you feel like is the most important things A&M's going to have to do in order to, make a run in Omaha, something that they just really historically have not done?
Starting pitching. You're going to have Nathan Detmer. You're probably going to have Mike Dallas, depending on how things go in the next game. They could, if they win the first one, they could save Dallas for a little bit later down the line. But you're going to have those two guys. But even with those guys, they have to get past the 5th inning. It's something I've talked about a lot. They haven't had a starting pitcher get past the 5th inning since when was the NFL draft? When they were up in Vanderbilt. That's when Nathan Detmer, 7 innings, I think, got a SEC Pitcher of the Week nod that week. But since then, which was late April, mid-April,
right,
they haven't had a starting pitcher go beyond 5 innings pitched. They've got to get some more out of their starting pitching, because any deficits at this point, it could be the end of your season when you look into that, and continue to have that consistency out of the bullpen. I know there was a time in the season where the bullpen was the bane of A&M's existence, and now it seems to be actually one of the stronger pieces they have to the puzzle. The other interesting thing is I'd like to see how their power does in a stadium. This is a stadium that faces the south, so the wind blows in. It's expansive. The outfield is deep, and it's interesting to see, for as many times as the home run has saved Texas A&M in games in the comebacks, is that still going to be in play here at the Schwab?
Travis, I know that you enjoy going to the College World Series. Omaha is a great atmosphere for a lot of people. What's kind of been the buzz so far, first couple days that you've been there, and what really makes Omaha such just a unique place for this kind of 12-day baseball tournament here in June?
I mean, it is like the thing that happens here. I like to call it's the state fair of baseball. I'm a Dallas native, so I grew up going to the Texas State Fair, and it's just like celebrating everything that's Texas. This is celebrating everything that's baseball. They have vendors selling everything you can imagine, T-shirts everywhere. It's a part. Tonight is the opening ceremony. They're going to have the teams march in and the mayor give a speech and fireworks. it just, with all those warm, good, romantic feelings you have about baseball, they're all encompassed into everything that happens here. I wasn't even aware of this. After the teams get done with practices today, which are open to the public, they just fire up the Field of Dreams movie on the scoreboard and play that lead, so the fans can just sit back to a baseball class there. And so there's, but the idea of this city has become so entwined with the College World Series that I couldn't imagine any other place, and it's so incredibly special seeing that dog pile statue outside and seeing all of the fanfare and events and buildings and tents and everything around the stadium. I've told this a lot of people. I've covered the Super Bowl. I've covered the basketball tournament. I've covered a lot of different things. College World Series is still always by far my favorite to cover. Sporting that to go to, have a dog hunt in baseball fans, you got to come to the College World Series.
Well, Travis, before we let you go, I think we got a guest in our next segment. Is that right?
Yeah. So interestingly, because we have the great Lee Benson, KAG sports anchor there, sports chief down there at KAGS for several years, home and News 9 now covering the Sooners. I talked with him out on the dugout of the Schwab about that matchup between Oklahoma and A&M and preview the Sooners a little bit.
What's going on, everyone? It's Travis Brown. We're here at the Schwab, Charles Schwab Field in Omaha. I'm next to, you might recognize this guy from a few years ago, former KAGS sports director, now Oklahoma City News 9's Lee Benson. He covers the Sooners up there, who is Texas A&M's first opponent here at the College World Series. Lee, what have you seen from the Sooners this year? I know they talked about a lot of chaos, a lot of a different offense than maybe A&M has seen this year. In covering the Sooners this year, what have you seen from them, and what do A&M fans have to expect from them?
Sure. Oklahoma, you go back 2 months ago, and it was a team a little over 500, weren't thinking much of them, and then like a switch was flipped, and they've played incredible baseball since about mid-April. And it's all about, obviously, pitching and hitting, and they've always been a good hitting team. The pitching has really come around, especially here in the NCAA tournament, and it's one of those things, you're a baseball guy as well. It's so bizarre how whenever a lineup can hit so well, it seems like there's a synergy there, and the pitching gets better. And even though you wouldn't think there's much to do with one another because they're two separate things, both sides have played so well. And right now, I know every team entering this tournament is super hot. Obviously, I know A&M is incredibly hot right now. But Oklahoma, it feels like they're one of those teams where in baseball, you get super hot and you just wonder, when's it going to end? And I keep thinking 2 weekends ago, it's probably going to start to fizzle out, that magic. Last weekend against Virginia Tech, thought it was going to fizzle out. It didn't, and here we are in Omaha. So Oklahoma's been a fun team to watch, and I'm looking forward to seeing this matchup against A&M. It's kind of surreal since I covered the Aggies like you did, 5-6 years ago, and now here we are covering Oklahoma and Texas A&M.
Yeah, of course. Pitching standpoint, what have you seen from their pitchers? What can A&M expect from some of those arms? I know, as is all college baseball teams here, very offensive heavy. What can they do from the pitching side?
Well, Oklahoma's ace is Jake Bennett. Probably going to see him tomorrow. I know Skip Johnson, though, did not.
Dodge my question a little bit.
Yeah, and he did that last week at Blacksburg, too. So that's kind of what he's been doing right now. I expect to see Jake Bennett, big lefty, throws hard. His ERA is around 3 here in the NCAA tournament. Knocked off Florida, beat Virginia Tech. So you'll see him out of the bullpen. Their closer, Trevin Michael, has been fantastic. And on not that we're going to get there, but David Sandlin's their next starter. And Cade Horton closed out the Blacksburg Super Regional. So he's a player where I'm not sure how Skip Johnson's going to manage his pitching staff in Game 1 of the series. Surely he wants Bennett to go as long as possible. But Cade Horton's a guy that you might be able to see right out of the bullpen early on, especially if Bennett struggles against the Aggies.
Offensively, like I mentioned before, their team, they talked about how do they kind of define their offense. They said they like to play chaotic, to create chaos. That's not necessarily great for the Aggies, who have struggled defensively, have especially struggled with PFPs, pitchers fielding bunts, things like that. And Jim Schlossnagle said it's unlike any offense they've seen in the SEC because there's a lot of teams that can thump in the SEC. Offensively, what does that chaos look like? And you're a baseball guy, for a team that might struggle a little bit with bringing some errors in the game, especially the pitching perspective, how does that matchup favor the Sooners or the Aggies?
So I've done a little bit of research on the game, and on paper, I think this does match up well for Oklahoma because I know A&M starting pitching has been a little shaky recently, and Oklahoma is so good offensively, especially like you mentioned, they get opposing pitchers uncomfortable because they steal a lot of bases, by far the most stolen bases of any team here in Omaha. I know A&M is number 2 behind Oklahoma. So yeah, you heard Skip Johnson today talk about how you have to be willing to make mistakes to have success, and he's not afraid to have these guys go out there and run a lot and make mistakes, and it creates success on the base pass because the other team has to make plays, and it works out for them. And the big reason why I think they're able to do it so much, though, is that 1 through 9 they're getting on base, so it makes it a lot easier to run when you got guys constantly on base. And as you mentioned with A&M, I'm curious to see if like you said, if their PFPs and their fielding is not the snuff, those little things, the details, that's going to be the difference most likely in games here in Omaha.
Could be close to what A&M saw in Louisiana Lafayette, a team that likes to run the Matt Deggs. I know you remember Matt Deggs from the Sam Houston State thing. So I'm not going to ask for prediction, but the 3 keys that you think Oklahoma, or a few keys Oklahoma needs to pull out the win.
Well, probably they're similar to A&M. Starting pitching is always important. If they get to Jake Bennett early, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm curious to see what the bullpen would look like. So starting pitching, as far as the bats go, if Oklahoma just keeps playing the way they are, especially against a starting pitcher for A&M, who I believe has been kind of shaky so far in the NCAA tournament, that looks good on paper. So starting the bats hitting the same way 1 through 9, and then you get to Trevin Michael, the closer in the bullpen. If Oklahoma can get to him, he's been phenomenal so far in the NCAA tournament. Has only allowed a couple of runs. Those are the 3 keys, but maybe the main key, though, is Jim Schlossnagle, because he had some success against Skip Johnson in Oklahoma at TCU since Skip Johnson got there in 2018. I believe TCU was 7-3 against the Sooners, so that might be one of those not looked at too much X factors in the game.
Thanks so much, Lee. You can find his stuff at Oklahoma News 9 up in Oklahoma City, and we'll be back for more coverage here from the College World Series.
Thanks again to Lee for giving us a little insight on the A&M Oklahoma matchup Friday afternoon. All right, Travis, I can't let you go without talking about food. And for once, I'm actually proud of you for starting the trip off on the right leg. What was that steak, man, that you posted on Twitter? And where did that come from? The Drover.
The Drover.
Okay.
It is a steakhouse here in Omaha. It's one that was recommended highly by Kendall Rogers, D1 Baseball. They have a whiskey marinated steak, a whiskey marinade. They put it in, they marinate it like after you order it and then put it on the grill. It's delicious. It's the best steak I've ever had in my life. Comes with some bread and some fries, and I got a little slice of key lime pie. I'm pretty sure that if I ever have to declare a final meal for myself, I want it to be that.
Okay, so they marinate it after you order it. So how long does it take to actually get the steak?
It took a little bit of time. It was about a 40-minute wait, so don't come famished, but you got plenty of bread. You got a all-you-can-eat salad bar.
It's worth the wait, though.
It's just immensely worth the wait. It was not the cheapest of meals, and I'm still trying to decide if this tournament goes, if A&M makes a good run in it, if I'm going to go back, because there might be a shot.
So I know that there's probably going to be a lot of people packing their cars in maroon and white heading up I-35 all the way to Omaha. What are a couple other places you think that, people coming for the first time need to check out up in Omaha, some staples?
Yeah, I know some places have closed and opened since I've been here last, but I know Blatt is still open over the right field wall of Charles Schwab Stadium, and that's a great place to eat. And then just the downtown district has a lot of places you can walk around and see. But if you come to Omaha, you're in Omaha, you got to get a steak. The Drover's great, but there's a ton of good steak places up here as well so I've been told. I know the team went to Sullivan's. It's another one that Troy Clanch said he highly recommends.
All right, well, we've got it all. We've talked baseball, we've talked A&M, we've talked food. I don't think we can talk about anything else that's important right now. So, all right, be sure to check theeagle.com for all of Travis's coverage from Omaha and the College World Series. We'll be back next week with another episode of the My Aggie Nation podcast. For Travis Brown, I'm Alex Miller. We'll see you next time.